Okay, so our topic is about qualitative researches, the design and methodology. So let me first go over the differences between qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so when you say qualitative research, then compared with quantitative researches, it's not really so simple when you look at it. I mean the difference. Okay, so the difference uh, are the following. Okay, so let's look at it like this one. So when you talk about the objective and purpose, you will see that alright, so again, we first start with the difference between the qualitative research and the quantitative research. So for objective and purpose, we will see that the qualitative research aims to gain an understanding on the underlying reasons. So more of reasons and motivation. So more of the questions of why. While in quantitative researches, we talk about the quantification of data, and then we generalize results from a sample to a population. So the idea of quantitative research is what is true to the particular is true to the general. What is true to the sample is true to the population. So the whole idea of quantitative research is when you get any sample from the population, draw the mean, standard deviation, draw the descriptors, and whatever it says in the sample, it becomes true to the population. So we talk here about generalization of data based on the quantifiable variables, right? Again, for qualitative research, the objective, the purpose is to uncover prevalent trends in thought and opinion. So let us remember the words uncover and prevalent trends. So meaning the underlying or the trending thought or thought process within a group of people and popular opinion. We don't judge whether it's correct or not. We just uncover whatever is prevalent in their thoughts. That is why you cannot just get it from mere surveys. You really have to go deeper and deeper into the topic. On quantitative research, sometimes it is followed by qualitative research. When you quantify data, of course, you want to go deeper also, in the sense that we want to explore some more findings further. So we know, for example, that what is true to the particular is true to the general, or we want to generalize some things. We have to understand which of these small generalization would reach the population. So that is why you need to back it up sometimes with qualitative research. So for example, we say that generally speaking, female students are more industrious, for example, than male students. And maybe data would show it, and sometimes data would contradict the generalization, and there will be outliers. How come there are students who are male and yet they're not lazy, they are industrious, or they're good in school? So you cannot just get it from mere quantitative research, right? Quantitative data. So you have to go further. So the next step would be to get those students who are male and then interview them and discover the prevalent trends, discover why they are not as lazy as the general population of male, for example only. Okay, so don't be offended. So for sample, usually the qualitative research has a small number of sample. Okay, so it may be representative cases, or So, for example, for nursing students, you may have a few cases of pregnant women who did the newborn screening, pregnant women who did not do the newborn screening, right? So you don't need 30 of them, you don't need 50 of them, you don't need the Slobin formula to compute, because those are quantitative domains. Those belong to the quantitative domains. However, when you say qualitative, you go deeper, right? And you discover the prevalent trends. You don't need a lot of people to do that. Sometimes you only have 5, and all of the 5 mentioned already the prevalent trends that you are saying, and that is already conclusive in the sense that you have heard them say, for example, those things. So, for example, in the case of newborn screening, if you saw that the main reason for not doing it is because of money or poverty, and you interviewed 10 pregnant women, and of the 10 pregnant women, 9 of them said it's because of money that they didn't do the NBS, then you would report that. So that does not, the generalization from those particulars need not reach a certain number of data, because you don't need a lot in order to do a qualitative research. On the other hand, for the quantitative research, it really depends on the population. So if the population is large, like 100 million in the case of the Philippines, should have a large number of cases, and not really focusing on the number but on the quality of the data, in the sense that, for example, you want to know the idea of the Filipino people, their opinions on the government, and their the way they combat the COVID-19 pandemic. So you cannot just get the number of cases from Manila or NCR. It has to come from all the regions. So there should be a strategy for doing it. There should be a stratified random sampling and all that. So the sample really becomes huge in this case. You cannot rely on 10 people alone, like in qualitative research. For data analysis, we say here that qualitative research is non-statistical. Yes, you can report certain data analysis, but very simple only, and you really don't go further or deeper in statistics. On the other hand, for qualitative research, this really goes deeper into statistical data, usually in terms of tables, and sometimes you go beyond descriptive stat, and you even go to inferential stat or conclusions, right? Examples, qualitative research these are examples of methods: focus group discussions, individual depth interviews with an underline on the depth interviews, and then group discussions. So sometimes there's the one-on-one also happens, and you can even do not a depth interview, but there's a checklist, and then you simply throw the questions, and then they simply answer to the best of their knowledge and ability. On the other hand, for quantitative research, you can have surveys, you can have simulations, you can have questionnaires, right? Or exams, sometimes standardized exams, standardized tests. By the way, for qualitative research, sometimes, especially for child psychology, they also employ or make use of expert observers, right? Like child psychologists or even parents, and they jot down, and those can be qualitative researchers. All right. So next up, we have the methods and examples of qualitative research. So these are examples of the methods that one could use in qualitative research. So first, we have the one-on-one interview. So one-on-one interview is set out preferably in a a threatening environment, the interviewee and the interviewer should feel relaxed. Choose also the time of day. You cannot do it late in the afternoon, or even if you do, it has to be the preference of the respondent. And please tell him or tell her that, yeah, for example, he or she would place the interview very late at night, like, hey, you can call me at 9 p.m. Are you sure, sir or ma'am? Because usually, aren't you tired already? Especially at that time, I can reschedule it early in the morning tomorrow. It will be okay for me because I just want a clear, interview with you, and I don't want to burden you, especially in the late hour of the night. Something like that. So you have to make it sure, because sometimes, especially when you are doing scholarly researches already, sometimes when your method is wrong, especially in qualitative research, and the panelists discovered that you made a mistake in the procedure, or sometimes they don't agree with the procedure, then they make you redo the whole thing. So please do it right the first time. That's my idea. Okay, so one-on-one interview, there's usually a list of questionnaire. So listen carefully to the answers. So when you ask the question, there's a response. Usually you acknowledge the response, quote one or two statements from the long response, and then make it as a takeoff point for your next question. You cannot just, okay, first question, how long have you been in the employ of Toyota Motor? And she says 6 years. Okay po, what is your position? You don't even recognize. A one-on-one interview is a conversation. Make use of the checklist, but deviate from the checklist. Please take a look at the person you're talking to, maintain eye contact, and be genuinely interested. When you do the interview, even, sort of lean forward, and you tilt your head towards I think it's the left, to show affection, to show, sympathy, especially if he or she is talking about a sad thing. You cannot just smirk your do a smirk. Remember, we are in the caring profession, so caring profession, you do care, right? So please listen carefully to the response, and then make those responses as a take-off point for another question, or to go deeper. The better way is, of course, to go deeper. You don't just get the responses from the surface. You have to go deeper, because if not, you won't have anything to write about in your paper. Focus groups would be like, for example, if your topic is about cabin, what do you call that? I was about to say cabin pressure, but no. Cabin sickness, was that, or cabin fatigue or something. Just like in the COVID-19, right? I'm sorry if I didn't get the correct term, but that you understand that, right? So everybody had experiences about the long drawn out lockdown, right? When you have to stay at home, and because of that, they experience a lot of sometimes psychological pain, psychological suffering. You cannot go right away and make it like the starting question. You cannot go this way. Ma'am, sir, I am a student of LPU St. Cabrini, and my topic is all about this. How was your experience in the COVID? No, you cannot do that. Start first by asking them, hi, hello questions, like how are you, how you've been doing, where you're staying now, something like that. Focus group discussion is usually grouping them together, like in a Zoom interview, maybe 10 of them or 15 of them all at the same time. But please recognize everybody, make everyone in the session speak. Make them talk about their experiences, make them share, especially those who are very quiet, and take note of their positions, right? It's better, of course, if you know their names, but when you start reporting, you have to make a picture in your head, like number one is that lady, something something, number two is that something, something like that. So you have to make that into a clear picture, because later on you will not quote them by name. You cannot mention their name. If you do mention their name, it has to be replaced with a fictitious name. That's being called for, especially in scholarly researches. So focus group discussion goes like that, but there's still a guide questions, and then you sort of throw the questions away, and then just like you're conducting like a big interview with your friends, like, okay, there's 5 of them or there's 18 of them, especially when you're a girl, there are many suitors, right? So you throw away a question, why do you think blah blah blah, so yeah, and then you let them answer one at a time. But don't make it always like a circular motion or a patterned response. You have to more or less randomize the calling and all that. So those things have to be planned. And then this is where the mistake lies, especially in qualitative researches. Usually in quantitative research, there's a model already, there's a theoretical model, there's a conceptual model at the beginning of the research, right? Because you sort of figured it out, especially with your RRL, with your related literature and all that. In qualitative research, the start is unknown. You don't have the variables yet. Sometimes you don't have the questions yet. Sometimes the questions are surface questions, and you saw that in other researches. But then that this is attitude, this is culture based, this is a different setting from the ones that you read from Taiwan or China or Indonesia, right? So it has to be taken out of the context of other nations. So you start from clean slate. There's just some traces of the questions, and then you start doing the question. But the question has to be at the beginning. It has to be I don't want to say unclear, I don't want to say vague, but not too refined. It has to be a little hazy in the beginning, just like what are the good things about being on lockdown? Those are clearly indirect questions, right? And then what are the bad things about doing on lockdown? But be careful about those kind of questions, because those kind of questions may be too far away from your research. And then when you start throwing those questions, and then they become engaged with those questions, you have to take hold of the FGD and redirect them to the path. So that is why it's good to have your sort of the guide questions. But the guide questions are not the statement of the problem, are not the purpose of the study. So what you can do is throw the questions to them. And this is true not only for focus group, this is true for everything, whether it's a case study, ethnographic research, focus group discussion, one-on-one interview. So these are all true, across researches. Because in a qualitative research, as I said, there is not yet a clear understanding about the placement of the variables and which variables would emerge in the first place as a true variable of your research. So that is why in certain qualitative researches, you call those as the emergent variables. So you choose about 5 or 6. Sometimes 4 would be okay, but in a scholarly research, maybe around 5 or 6 would do. 7 would be a bit too much, but maybe it will be allowed. But 8 is already, that's beyond the normal. So again, you throw the questions to them, whether individually or in a focus group, and then look for similarity of answers. So maybe you talk about how they cope. In case of our example research, how they cope, what are the things that they're doing, right? So instead of asking how much TV are you watching, you can redirect them in letting them answer that TV is their recourse. So parang you cannot just ask them, do you watch TV during the pandemic? Of course the answer would be yes, unless they don't have TV sets at home, or maybe their TV was broken and they cannot just yet buy during the pandemic. So maybe you can ask them, what are your ways of coping while you're in the house? Oh, I just sweep the floor and make my room tidy and all that. Also, is that true? You really did that for the whole 6 months? No, of course there's what are your sources of entertainment? See, you're redirecting, but only indirectly. You cannot just give the question, the keyword of the question to them, because if not, that would be a leading questionnaire, a leading question, and that would not amount really to an emergent variable, because you want the emergent variable to be like watching TV or form of entertainment, because not all of them will say that. Maybe some would say, I've been playing computer games, I'm learning new skills. So those are, when you look at those are coping mechanism. So instead of ways to entertain themselves, or ways to cope, or ways to things that they do, hobbies, it now becomes an emergent variable of coping mechanism, right? So now you can make use of those loose anecdotal responses. That's what you call them. Like at the beginning, you don't know that there is a pattern, but then as you interview all of them, you would realize, oh, I think the word TV was mentioned like 15 times out of 20. So you take note of that. So those become now the emergent variables, especially if it is really coming from them. You cannot ask them, do you watch TV? And then whenever they say yes, okay, TV is one of the emergent variables. You cannot, because the word TV was thrown to them. So really the questionnaire has to be thought clearly. The thought process that goes with the questionnaire should be clear. And then remember, you're asking yourself, what would be the commonality? A while ago we mentioned about the emergent, the trends, the similarity of the responses from across. Of course, there are many tool wherein you can use, like there's the Atlas T. There are many other ways to do it. Like there is a word cloud. So I think some tools are even free, right? So just look at those things. Basta the whole idea is you throw the questions. The questions are guided, right? And then there's a prompt, there's a deeper question, there's a much more deeper question. Now sometimes all they ever respond is yes or no. So you have to go deeper and ask probing questions, follow-up questions. So that is why when you have a list of questions, you must prepare yourself to deviate from those questions, especially when they are throwing answers that are not in your questions, in your questionnaire. So when they throw an answer that is entirely different from all the responses, you have to recognize that. Said, is that so? Can you elaborate on that? Something like that. So those are the things that you must follow. So remember, emergent variables, choose somewhere between 4 to about 6. 7 would be still okay, but medyo overboard. 8 is really, that's too much. Okay, ethnographic research, from the word itself, it's like a research on the way things are going on in a certain group. So ethnographic research can be like, for example, the people from Taal. What did they do to cope during the time when the volcano erupted or something like that? So you are immersing yourself there, and then there's the ethnographic research. It's like an immersive content. You talk to them, each one of them, and then it's not just the interview. It's documenting their behavior, the way they talk, the way they look at things, the way they reason out, and you can hear them, right? So you really have to keep journals when you do that. So those ethnographic research is really one interesting kind of qualitative research. It's hard to write, it's hard to produce, but then during the panel defense, it's easy to pass. Okay, process of observation, I mentioned that a while ago. You are observing sandbox personalities, and behavior, especially when you are in a playground, so you're observing them, and then you become part of the playground by sitting, for example, in one of those benches. At first, the kids would be altered, their behavior will be altered because they see an adult sitting with them. But that kind of behavior, when they look at you and said, oh, there's an outsider in our sandbox, but then later on you become part of them. So you're just like a tree or another person, playing, or maybe just one person's part of the whole gang. So when things mellow that way, then your observation would be more would be stronger, would have more weight, because you're not strangers with them anymore. So all the things that they tell you, their response to you, the way they smile at you, those have to be documented. So those are process of observation. Sometimes people would even record those video. Record keeping can be journal, like I mentioned something about the research just before about whether watching Sesame Street aid in speeding up the reading comprehension, and then the reading skill of youngsters, of toddlers. So usually parents would really have to do the record keeping. How many hours per day watching, at what age they start to speak, what are the first words. So those are the things that you can do. You don't have to do it like in the interview, as long as the record is intact and the record is clear, then those can be part of your qualitative research. And then of course there's the case study. Case study would be just like as I told you a while ago, maybe cases of pregnant women. So maybe you have 9 of them or 10 of them. So just ask your teachers how many would be the bare minimum. For in my opinion, even if you only have 5 cases, but the case study or analysis that you are going to do with those 5, if it is deep enough, it can easily fill in like 50 pages of analysis, then it will be okay. The problem with with especially if you're a student and you only have 5 case study and you don't know how to interview, you don't know how to document the interview, and sometimes you know how to interview but you don't know how to document what you interview. So it takes skill to do that. So that is why we ask students to at least bump up the number to about 10 or 15 even. But I think 15 is too much already, especially if you're only doing your research in such a short period of time. It really depends on your teachers. Ask them and give them the benefit of the doubt. If they say, no, we need 15, or no, we need 30, that's too much. But maybe you can explain to them that, no, according to Sir George, this is the no, don't make use of my name. Case study is really, just for a few individuals. You don't have to do it like 100. It can be done, but maybe in a longitudinal study, or maybe you can do it if you have a lot of time. But if not, then your minimum would be around 10. Maybe 10 would already be doing it. So those are the definition, the types, methods, and examples of qualitative research methods. I hope that you've learned something from our discussion. If you have questions, you can leave a comment on this video, or send it to your teacher, or contact us through your teacher. And just remember that doing research is really, it's not fun, but later on the fulfillment will be there, especially if you finish your research and it's really a product of your sweat, blood, and tears, and eventually you graduate because of that. So yeah, that's me saying good luck to all of you, and have a nice day. Thank you very much. Profist.